Hayley had replayed that night in her mind so many times that the memory no longer felt like a sequence of events, it had become a labyrinth she could not escape. The after-party had been meant to be a celebration, a place where the dim lights and soft music blurred the sharp edges of reality for a few stolen hours. Hayley had allowed herself to be swept into that current, believing the evening would be nothing more than another chapter of trivial conversations and polite smiles. She had lifted it to her lips without hesitation, but the moment the wine touched her tongue, a bitter edge cut through the flavor, sharp and wrong, like metal hiding under sugar. The world began to tilt. The music felt louder, the air heavier, and her own heartbeat became a pounding echo in her ears. The last thing she remembered before the pain started was the way the glass had looked in her hand, her fingerprints smudged across its surface. The rim glistening with the faintest trace of red under the lights. Then came the sharp, wrenching agony in her lower abdomen, the sudden dizziness that nearly sent her collapsing to the floor. Someone's hands had guided her to a chair, but the voices around her were muffled, distorted, swallowed by the growing tide of panic surging through her veins. The hours that followed were a blur of hospital lights, muted footsteps, and the sterile scent of antiseptic. The cold words of the doctor were delivered with clinical detachment. She clung to the possibility that it had been an accident, a cruel twist of fate beyond anyone's control. But the bitterness of that drink haunted her. She wrapped it carefully in paper and placed it in a small box, hiding it away as though it were an artifact from a crime scene. For days she could not bring herself to look at it. Hayley took the glass to a discreet private lab, far from the reach of gossip and curious eyes. The technician, accustomed to working with people who wanted quiet answers, accepted it without question. The tests would take time, but Hayley was patient. She had lived with uncertainty before, but this was different. This was a truth that could not remain buried. When the results finally came, she had prepared herself for anything, or so she thought. The report lay on the table, the black ink sharp against the white paper. The findings were clear. Clinical, leaving no room for interpretation. Among the partial prints lifted from the glass, one set stood out, fully identifiable. The name attached to it stopped her breath. Dani's fingerprints on the same glass that had carried the bitter liquid. Dani, who had smiled at her during the party. Dani, whose presence in her life had always been tangled in quiet rivalries and undercurrents of distrust. Her mind churned with possibilities, each one darker than the last. That someone she knew, someone within her circle, had wanted her to lose the child. The implications reached deep, clawing into every memory she had of their interactions. The more Hayley thought about it, the more the pieces began to align, forming an image she did not want to see. She began retracing every moment from that night. From the moment she arrived at the party to the instant the pain began. Dani had been near her more than once, weaving in and out of conversations. Always with that same carefully composed expression. There had been a moment brief, almost imperceptible, when Dani had taken her glass under the pretense of setting it down or refreshing the drink. It had seemed harmless then. Now it stood out like a flare in the darkness. The knowledge settled over Hayley like ice. If Dani had truly done this, it wasn't just cruelty, it was an attack, a deliberate act meant to strip her of something irreplaceable. The child had been more than a hope, it had been a bridge to a future she had been ready to embrace. That future had been shattered in silence, replaced by a gnawing void that no justice could fill. In the days that followed, Hayley moved through the world with a quiet, calculating resolve. She told no one about the fingerprint match, not yet. Speaking it aloud would make it real. And once that happened, there would be no way to turn back. Instead, she observed. She watched Dani with a kind of detachment, studying every gesture, every word, searching for cracks in the facade. And each time, Hayley's mind returned to that single, damning piece of evidence, the glass, the bitter taste, and the name in black ink. But the truth was dangerous. If Dani had acted once, a rivalry buried beneath years of social politeness? Or was it connected to something larger, some scheme in which Hayley's loss had been a calculated step? The glass remained in her possession. Locked away now, but no longer just an artifact, it was evidence, a key to unraveling a truth she was almost afraid to know. She could feel the weight of it in the back of her mind at all times, as though it exerted a quiet pull on her thoughts. Each day without confrontation was a day spent balancing on the edge of a blade. The evidence tied Dani to the drink, but not to the act itself. Circumstance could be twisted, intent could be denied. Hayley knew that if she made her move too soon, she might lose any chance of exposing the truth. And if Dani sensed danger, she might strike again, this time in a way that left no trace. The loss had already taken something irreplaceable from Hayley. But now it had given her something as well, a resolve sharper than grief, a determination to hold on to the one weapon she had left, the truth. Whether that truth would bring justice or destruction, she could not yet know. But one thing was certain. The night she tasted bitterness in her glass had marked the beginning of a war that neither of them could walk away from unchanged. Thing was certain. The night she tasted bitterness in her glass had marked the beginning of a war that neither of them could walk away from unchanged.